Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study through the entire Bible. Currently, we are in the book of Nehemiah. We're going to study chapter 4. Now, this is a very interesting chapter on opposition. Sometimes it's very, when we deal in life, we often neglect the spiritual side of things. And understandably, because we are cognitive, we see through the physical realm. And we really don't see or feel the spiritual. Now, I know that there are a lot of people out there that claim that they do, but that's, where we live at is in the physical realm. Now, I'm saying that because we know this by revelation of Scripture, that there is the spiritual realm, that there are spiritual forces against us. And the way that these spiritual forces work, we can say, like, for example, Satan's attack against us, primarily, he works through people, through planting thoughts. Those thoughts manifest in actions, okay? So, for example, think about the book of Job. When Job got attacked, we know Satan was behind it, but he inspired the people around him to take his wealth. We know that Satan worked through David to number the people that cost 70,000 people's lives. Now, I'm saying all of that not to get so deep off into the, stuff that we can't really explore. But I'm saying is that what sometimes is great news, that we should also prepare and expect opposition. And so Nehemiah is going to face this. He got a great decision by the king. Well, not everybody is happy about that. So let's get into it. Nehemiah chapter 4. Now, remember, Nehemiah arrives in Jerusalem. He inspects the gate and he begins to build. And like I say, apologize again for that hideous time on my part to be able to read through adequately those Hebrew names. The bottom line is that they are building the wall section by section, piece by piece, as they're moving around. Okay. But verse 4 says, when Sanballat heard that they were building the wall, he became furious and he mocked the Jews. Now remember, we said the first thing, he started mocking them. We're going to see his progression. And then you can even ask, why are they upset about this? Now, on another note, you can even ask the question, why do the world hate the Jews? And my answer to that is, it's a spiritual answer. But, verse 2, before his colleagues and the powerful men of Samaria, he said, what are these pathetic Jews doing? Can they restore it by themselves? Will they offer sacrifice? Will they ever finish it? Can they bring these burnt stones back to life from the mouth of rubble? Now, of course, we know their motives. These were not questions designed to say, hey man, think about what you're doing. They were very much so disparaging. Now notice that the powerful men of Samaria, remember, prior to the 70-year exile, Samaria was the capital city of the northern tribes, the kingdoms of Israel, the northern tribes, the 10 tribes, okay? Now, during these past 70 years, people kind of occupied the land. And we know that at the end of Ezra, They'd even started marrying some of the returning exiles. Okay. Later, they would be called the Samaritans. Verse 3, then Tobiah the Ammonite, who was beside him, said, indeed, even if a fox climb up what they are building, he would break down their stone wall. So they're really just mocking them at this point. Can you guys really build this? You're always going to have sometimes people that will be in opposition. You see it on TV, right? It's called conflict. Now that the writers do it in TV scripts to create conflict. Sometimes it's silly because then but anyway, this is what they're doing. But they're doing it out of evilness right here. Verse 4, listen, our God, for we are despised. Make their insults return on their own heads, and let them be taken as plunder to the land of captivity. So this is what his prayer to God is. Verse 5, do not cover their guilt, and let their sin be erased from your sight, because they have provoked the builders. So we build the wall until the entire wall was joined together up to half its height. For the people had a will to keep working. So this is one of the things here that he's saying that, hey, everybody had a kind of a mind to work. That's the old King James, by the way. Everybody had a mind to work. Notice that everybody had a will to keep working. So while they were trying to discourage that, the people were more encouraged by God's encouragement in them. Verse 7. When Sanballat, Tobiah, and the Arabs, Amorites, and the Ashdodis heard that the repair to the wall of Jerusalem was progressing and that the gaps were being closed, they became furious, right? They plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem and to throw it into confusion. So again, this is serious because notice he said they want to fight. Now again, if you were to ask them, why do you care, right? Why are you guys, is it that you feel that you're losing land, whatever? No, they were just evil, plain and simple. Verse 9, so we prayed to our God and stationed guards because of them day and night. Now, what's going to turn out to be is they just talking. But they took their threat seriously. Verse 10, in Judah it was said, the strength of the laborers fail, since there is no such rubble. We will never be able to rebuild the wall. And our enemies said, they won't know or see anything until we're among them and can kill them and stop the work. When the Jews who lived nearby arrived, they said to us time and again, everywhere you turn, they attack us. So I stationed people behind the lowest section of the wall at the vulnerable areas. I stationed them by families with their swords, spears, and bows. After I made an inspection, I stood up and said to the nobles, the officials and the rest of the people, don't be afraid of them. Remember the great and awe-inspiring Lord, and fight for your countrymen, your sons, and your daughters, and your wives, and your homes. When our enemies heard that we knew their scheme, in other words, they were going to just attack them while they were working. When our enemy knew, verse 15, when our enemies heard, I should say, that we knew their scheme and that God had frustrated it, every one of us returned to his own work on the wall. From that day on, half of my men did the work while the other half held spears, shields, and bows and armors. The officers supported all the people of Judah who were rebuilding the wall. The laborers who carried the loads worked with one hand and held a weapon in the other hand. Now this is it is both amazing because I want you to kind of understand what's going on here. They got a sword in one hand while they're working in the other. Imagine working under those conditions. Their focus was to rebuild that wall. This was their mission. Just like Ezra's purpose was to rebuild the temple, their mission was to rebuild the city, build the wall, I should say, around the city. But imagine working under those kind of circumstances, kind of looking over your shoulder, wondering if there was going to be a sudden attack. Verse 16 again. Verse 18. Each of the builders had his sword strapped around his waist while he was building, and the trumpeters were beside me. Then I said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, the work is enormous and spread out, and we are separated far from one another along the wall. Whenever you hear the trumpet sound, rally to us there. Our God will fight for us. So we continued the work, while half of the men were holding spears from daybreak until the stars came out. And at that time I also said to the people, let every one of his servants spend the night inside of Jerusalem, so they can stand guard by night and work by day. And I and my brothers and my men and the guards with me never took off our clothes. Each carried his weapon, even when washing. So they kind of wash. Again, this is kind of interesting because what they did was they kind of washed, or they didn't. They understand too. At the time, they did not. The bathing. It's a little different than when we kind of know, right? But at this time, they had to just bathe or wash up with their clothes on, and also with their swords in hand. Now, it seems that most of the part that their enemies, God was the one that thwarted their efforts. Wisely, Nehemiah and them took their threats serious. Although they never came through with it. They never had to stop and fight. But the threat was real, and they always took it serious enough to always be on guard. In other words, and then too, notice they wasn't cavalier about it. When they said well, our God will fight for us, they just didn't say, well, let's just turn our backs and let's just keep building. So while they were doing a great work, they did this great work under threat. They did this work under threat. I'm going to start 5 and probably stop in just a few minutes here. And I'm going to pick this up, but so actually they finished. I'm going to come back because this is not. I'm going to deal with this later. They finished the wall, but there was something I missed here too. Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm going to get ahead of myself now. Sorry about that, guys. I'm getting ahead of myself. There's a couple of chapters I'm jumping ahead, but I'll wait. So my point is that notice they're building this. They're building the wall. Now they also move the people inside the city so that everybody can be protected. Like I said, they took their threats extremely seriously. Now, again, I think in America, it is hard for us to comprehend this. When you think about this right here. Later on, Nehemiah, because in my mind, as I'm thinking, why not ask the king for guards? Now, Nehemiah is going to address that later on. And one reason why what he's going to say is that we've told them that we're trusting God. Now, whether that was good or not, I'm no judgment here. But um, but in America, and this is the difference, because in America we have laws and we have a constitution, and America's laws is different pretty much than any other nation during that time. That's why I think it's hard for us sort of to understand this. Now, I do think Nehemiah and them could have asked the king, Xerxes, for help. He just didn't want to. We'll see that later. Because this permission to rebuild started with him. Now, what is interesting about this, and I think it's very important, what's interesting about this, that they decided to trust God and kind of weather that opposition. Okay. Now, so with that, the people of the land, and you have to remember, they didn't have social media. They did not have telephones, television, news, and all of that. So it would take sometimes weeks and months. So let's just say, even if he was to ask the king for help, because the governors, they all had letters. So he did have that. Remember, he had letters saying this work has to proceed. So now, but as you see the opposition, what if he sent back the letters? It would take weeks, sometimes months, to get to the king, and then a return answer. So a lot of damage could be done back during this time, and that's the point. So the greatest thing here is he had to trust God. They had to trust God to protect them. And as I said, what kind of looked at is that they never fell through on their threat. They never came through on any of their threats. So to me, even in that, that's a testimony to God working on their behalf. That they never, ever, ever had, they had to stop and really defend themselves. But they lived under the threat of it, and that was bad enough. Look, don't forget to like and share this video, and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comments section below. All comments are welcome. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I'll see you in the next study.